This is Brown Mary with the OG Mary Trump, and we're going to talk about Donald Trump's cankled presidency. And specifically, I want to lead with the big news of today is something that we've been asking Mary Democrats to do for a while. Thankfully, it was bipartisan. Oh, bring the Epstein case, the scandal, front and center. Oh, do a press conference with all the survivors. The girls who are now women, who are victims, who were raped by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell, the rapist who, along with Jeffrey Epstein, created this international scheme to groom, to stalk, to abuse women who got transferred to a minimum security camp, which, by the way, no one's ever been transferred with her type of background before, just like no one else has ever gone a sweetheart deal like Jeffrey Epstein. Oh, finally, it's in the news. And folks, as I was talking to Mary right before we press live, you would think that Republicans, realizing this is a big story, realizing they can't escape it, realizing that these women came out and said, F it, we're just going to release our own names, realizing now that they've lost not just Thomas Massey, also Marjorie Taylor Greene, Nancy Mace, and another Republican, and they just need who?
Boebert.
Oh, there you go, Boebert. Oh, they just need two more, and they're like, okay, should we do the right thing, launch an investigation into the Epstein files, hurt our ailing, cankled president, because this is the only bipartisan issue in America where over 80% of Americans want the release of the files. He's negative double digits. And we just found out, Mary, as of 30 minutes ago, that instead of announcing a committee to investigate, get to the truth of the matter behind the Epstein scandal, Republicans instead have launched a new subcommittee to reinvestigate the January 6th insurrection as a, if you will, appetizer to eventually giving these January 6th insurrectionists what they want, which is, in addition to the pardon Donald Trump already gave them, also money in a financial settlement. Mary, I give it to you with that good news.
Sorry, my head's about to explode. The January 6th thing, I know that's not the main issue that we're talking about right now, but I don't know that people understand, or that enough people understand, just what an abomination it is.
Yep.
That, one, they got pardoned, and two, they are going to get monetarily compensated for having attempted an insurrection against the United States government. They are being rewarded for being traitors. But hey, Donald gets rewarded every day for being a traitor. I just did a video earlier about how, so far in the Trump regime, as since January 20th, 2025, he and his corrupt adult sons have brought in something like $6 billion.
Yep.
Off of by leveraging the power of the presidency. These people are despicable. It should not surprise us. It should horrify us, but not surprise us, that this fascist Republican Party will go to any lengths to protect Donald for reasons we don't begin to understand yet. I think, there are three that I can think of. They are all in.
Yep.
They believe in the fascism and the authoritarianism. They are simply, that's one, they're simply in it for their own petty power. They want to be near the power center and on the right side of the wrong guy, or they are somehow compromised. Or some fourth other thing that I can't even, what does surprise me is that there are, at least to date, 4 Republicans willing to stand up against this. And quite frankly, these are extremist people.
Yep.
All Republicans in Congress are. But, if you had told me Nancy Mace, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and Thomas Massey were going to be at the leading edge of this fight to release the Epstein files, going against Donald Trump's wishes, I would not have believed you. So it suggests that there is seriously damning information here, and that they understand, because let's be real, I don't think Nancy Mace cares about other human beings any more than Marjorie Taylor Greene cares about other human beings, but they clearly believe that it would be self-defeating, to say the least, to be on the wrong side of this issue, especially, Waj, since the reason we're still talking about this, it's not because you and I care about it, it's because the Republican base cares about it.
That's right. It's because Donald Trump, as an authoritarian, has created an alternative reality that suits his fickle ego, in which he won the 2020 election that he lost, in which everything where he loses is because things are rigged, not because he's an incompetent buffoon who has failed up in life due to his his wealth and whiteness and celebrity. A man who, in reality, has been bankrupted 6 times, has squandered his daddy's $400 million, has committed fraud against the people through charity, through Trump University, through his organization, a man who's held liable for sexually assaulting E. Jean Carroll, a man who is a criminal, a convicted criminal. He projects all the time because he needs to create this alternative reality where he's the strong man, where he's brilliant. And all these reeks, like you mentioned, these Republicans now have to go along, even though they know better, because we know them, we talk to them, and they know he's delusional, but they have to create and maintain the artifice, right? The emperor has no king. We learn about this as kids. It's the same psychology at work. Oh, I have a psychologist, Mary Trump here. Authoritarians, right? They need to create the fiction. And then the only truth is their truth. All of their enemies are your enemies. All of their friends are your friends. It's loyalty to the king. And so the king says, I won January 2020. I won the election. And they go, yes, yes, you did, king. You did. And all those people there, they weren't insurrectionists. They were my friends and allies. Yes, indeed. Yes. And because that's their base, Mary, their base has become radicalized. Now, going back to your point about Nancy Mace and Boebert and MTG, and I think it's important, they are not nice people. Nancy Mace is a survivor of sexual abuse, and yet she still loves the guy who was indicted, held liable for sexually assaulting E. Jean Carroll. No problem. They realize that the base, Mary, that they have radicalized with the QAnon conspiracy is like Frankenstein's monster. And on this issue, they can't BS the base. The base was promised, Mary. They were promised that the deep state would be revealed and destroyed by Donald and Cash and Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi. They were promised the release of the Epstein files. And guess what? Donald is all up in those files. That's according to Wall Street Journal reporting. Pam Bondi told them in May. So the words that I use, Mary, that I think are accurate is that this is the biggest cover up we have seen. This is the Trump administration covering up the Epstein scandal and aggressively lying to the American public and its base. And everything else is distraction. And what I mean by that is people say, oh, the bullshit press conference yesterday was distraction. Yes. And that distraction fuels the end game. And the end game is an authoritarian regime, unleashing the military, National Guard, lies about crime, the eugenics bullshit against black people born as criminals, all, anti-DEI, rewriting history, going against the Smithsonian. People are like, it's a distraction. It's a distraction. Sure, it's a distraction and part and parcel of the plan for authoritarian rule. But your take on this?
Yeah, it's a really good point. First, I just want to say hi, Andy. I just saw Andy Borowitz joined, which is awesome.
Hey, Andy.
So you're absolutely correct. Sometimes the distractions are also things we need to pay attention to, right? Whether or not somebody's throwing garbage bags out the White House, yeah, okay, that's not important. But the fact that Donald immediately said, it's AI, it was AI, that's something we need to be paying attention to. The fact that Donald may be using his hostile takeovers of American cities to distract from the Epstein files doesn't mean that those aren't very serious incursions into the rights of states to be autonomous and of our civil liberties. So I think Donald is so desperate right now that everything he does that's a distraction is exactly as you said. It is part and parcel of the overarching project to destroy American democracy and create, whether it's going to be a theocratic apartheid state or it's going to be a fascist authoritarian dictatorship. Kind of doesn't, I mean, it matters, I guess, but right now what matters is that's the project. His motives are irrelevant. He has no interest he has no ideology. He just wants whatever needs to happen to protect him. That's all that matters to him. Our concern now has to shift to the other people who actually have the power to make all of this happen. Because
Mm.
Donald has his power is in ceding it to others, essentially, because he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't really know what's going on. He is not running the show. All he is trying to do is to protect himself, enrich himself, and accrue more power so that he is invulnerable. Meanwhile, Stephen Miller, Christino, Tom Homan, these people have real agendas and real ideologies that are antithetical to what this country is supposed to be, an aspirational democracy that is that represents all of its people equally. Something we've never been, but again, have aspired to. They don't want any of that. They want this country to be white and Christian, and they want all of the power in the hands of a very few obscenely wealthy white men.
I agree with you. You know, this is the reason why we titled this Trump's Cankled Presidency, because he's the oldest person to ever be elected. Folks, just trust the evidence of your eyes and ears. He is not the same man he was 2 years ago. He doesn't look it. They cannot hide the big bruise on his right arm. They tried yesterday in the press conference. It made it look worse. They can't hide the cankles. We still don't know why he was MIA Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Could be he got sick and they made him feel better, right? We still don't have the hospital records from his assassination attempt. You could see clearly he doesn't have the stamina. He's fallen asleep publicly while the cameras are on him. He's only taken almost 14 security briefings. He's golfed for about 20% of his presidency. He literally, you see him on camera saying, "What's this? When am I signing?" I think that the people close to him, Mary, we're talking about the Stephen Millers, the Russell Vaughts, the JD Vances, realize Daddy might be dying. Daddy might not be here for a while. So what they do is they whisper to him, "Donald, you know what they're saying? Look what Putin did. Hey, Donald, guess what? Mail-in voting. That's why you lost. Mail-in voting. Hey, Donald, think about 2020 again." He goes, "2020, you're right. I won. Hey, Donald, crypto, bro, crypto. Why don't you reduce regulations on crypto and pass the first pro-crypto bill, Genius Act?" And voila, his family, I'm so glad Mary brought it up, because it's always a grift. Even as he's dying, the grift continues. It could be the biggest scandal. Can you imagine if Obama, I don't know, was in bed with the crypto bros, passed the first pro-crypto legislation and deregulated crypto, and just lo and behold made $5 billion. So my take on this, Mary, is I agree with you. I believe it's like Julius Caesar. They're sharpening their knives. They realize Daddy's dying. They realize the heir apparent, JD Vance, even though he thinks, and Peter Thiel thinks, that he could take the crown and become like this new type of Christian avatar, they probably realize he's a doughboy who probably Epps couches and the base doesn't like him. So what I think they're doing, they all have their united but separate agenda. Stephen Miller has a white nationalist agenda. Russell Vaught has a white Christian nationalist agenda. Musk and Thiel have a techno-fascist agenda.
Yep.
Putin has his own agenda. Murdoch has his own agenda. And I want to remind people, Mary, and what your take on this, that Murdoch met with JD Vance. This is reported. Met with JD Vance before Wall Street Journal dropped the first Epstein article. And it seems like the one Achilles cankle of Donald Trump is Epstein.
Sorry.
The
That's
two
really
Achilles
good.
cankles.
Achilles cankle. I'm putting that on a bumper sticker or something.
Give it to God. The character of God said, "Wad, you always talk about the two weaknesses of Donald Trump, the two E's, the economy and Epstein. Those are the two Achilles cankles." And I told God, I'm stealing it. And so now you could steal it from me and God.
God is somebody like one of my favorite people I don't believe in. He's great. I had so much fun it was years ago. I was on God's show and it was they're great. Anyway, well, listen, I think Charlie Pierce calls J. Devan Vance the most hated vice president in American history. It's one of the few things Americans can agree on is just how much we hate J. Devan Vance, or we continue to call him Baby JD Vance because he hates the baby meme so much. Um, they are clearly positioning themselves for a future without Donald, for sure. And what kind of surprises me is the blatancy with which they're doing it. I mean, what
Mm.
JD did was, I think it was very self defeating, um, because you don't you don't talk about the fact that, your boss is about to die and you're totally ready to take over, but no, 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 I mean, he'll die eventually, but he's immortal. It's just very
That was
poorly
just
done.
this week, right, Mary? Just like
Yeah,
on Monday? Yeah.
yes, and it put Donald in a position of having to answer the question, "Why did so many people think you were dead?" The weekend. And, Donald's going to know why he got asked that question. And if he's also going to know, if he doesn't already, that JD Vance didn't do, didn't toe the line. Because what Vance should have said to stay in Donald's good graces was, oh no, he's never going to die. He's the best, the strongest, the whatever. And I will never be president because Donald's going to be president in perpetuity. So on the one hand, that puts Donald kind of on notice, and I don't think JD Vance has made him anything easier for himself. But will it matter? And I'm not so sure it will, because the infrastructure is in place. And that's why, what you and I've been saying for a very long time, Donald is not the problem. I mean, he's a problem to the extent that he does have real power. He is stealing billions of dollars from American taxpayers. He is actively um, committing violence against Americans and American cities, and he is enabling others to do worse, right? So obviously he's a problem. Is JD Vance going to be less of a problem? It doesn't matter that JD Vance is not going to have the same loyalty from the base that Donald has. Probably not, because the real problem is that for the last 10 years, thanks to the fact that a diluted and significant minority of American people decided to put Donald Trump in the Oval Office, the right has been planning. They don't need Donald Trump anymore. They don't need JD Vance. If JD Vance ascends to the presidency, he's not going to be president. It's going to be a triumvirate of Peter Thiel, David Sachs, and Elon Musk, or something as bad or worse.
I completely agree. I believe that Donald Trump has, for the most part, outlived his usefulness. He's 79 years old. They know he's not going to live forever. And people say, Waj, well, show the receipts. Let me bring some receipts to piggyback on what Mary was saying. J.D. Vance and Donald Trump were not close. J.D. Vance's entire career was manufactured in part by Peter Thiel, one of the PayPal mafia members. That was a nickname. It's Thiel, Sachs, and Elon Musk, who also have roots to South Africa. This man is a billionaire, a man who's a eugenicist, a man who's a white nationalist, a man who supports Curtis Yarvin and his techno-fascist beliefs. Peter Thiel was the one who bankrolled J.D. Vance's complete 180 makeover into alpha Christian white MAGA warrior J.D. Vance, who holds the gun while looking up at the sky and barely wins the Ohio Senate race. It was Sachs, Thiel, Musk who then hand delivered J.D. Vance as a VP candidate to Donald Trump. And then the crypto Tweedledee and Tweedledum are like, yeah, JD, he's fine, daddy. So that's how JD becomes vice president. He's groomed. I use the word groomed. He's been groomed by Thiel for years, and he wants to be groomed.
Yeah.
And he's willing to sell out anyone, including his brown wife and mixed race Indian American kids. Then you have Russell Vought, who's a white Christian nationalist, co author of Project 2025, who also believes in white supremacy and in power, but he has the white Christian nationalist agenda. Then you got Stephen Miller, also wants power by any means necessary, doesn't care about democracy, but he's dyed in the wool white nationalist, right? So you got the techno fascists, the Stephen Miller and the Steve Bannons, and you got the Russell Vaught's. And JD Vance, I think, thinks, oh, I can tie this together. I don't think he can. But going to your point, Mary, what I don't think people are realizing is that Project 2025 has been put on steroids. They've accelerated the 4-year plan to a 1-year plan. And I give you just the past 2 weeks. I think what they realize is daddy ain't going to live longer. So let's get as much power as we can then it won't matter who our avatar is. We'll take away mail-in voting. We'll do gerrymandering. We'll rig it so Republicans own the House and the Senate. We have all the money anyway. We have the Supreme Court. We have the media. We have the House. We have the Congress. Then what we'll do is we'll normalize the militarization of American cities. We'll take over law enforcement. We'll unleash it against the American people. What just happened yesterday? Military lawyers are now acting as immigration judges. And furthermore, we're going to implement our pro-death policy with what just happened in Florida, no vaccines. So I think what they're preparing for is even if Donald goes down and if we can't trust JD to be the backup quarterback, it won't matter because we have enough power. Am I cray? Tell me I'm cray.
You're not, unfortunately. I mean, no, sorry. I don't want you to be crazy. That would be mean.
I am crazy. Thank you. Make me feel better. Say I'm wrong.
No, I'm not going to make you feel better. Sorry. Eyes wide open, my friend. Eyes wide open. No, I think part of the agenda is to make Americans weak, sick, poor, and keep them ignorant, right?
Yep.
This is something about which I can make you feel better. I mean, not that you haven't thought this, but just it's easy to forget. It's not that there are more of us than there are of them, because they are trying mightily to make sure that doesn't matter by further rigging a system that is already in their favor because of the Electoral College and gerrymandering and a corrupt, illegitimate supermajority Supreme Court, etc. However, it is extremely difficult to force an authoritarian dictatorship upon a democratic country in which the majority does not want such a thing.
Yeah.
So, I'm not saying they aren't going to try, and I'm not saying it's going to be easy. And I actually do believe that this country, if it's not a fascist country, it has a fascist government, and it is not easy to turn back from that. However, that having been said, we do have a lot of power in the form of democratic blue state governors. Governors of California, Illinois, New Jersey, Massachusetts, New York, etc., have enormous power. Can they save the federal system? Can they undo the damage that Donald is doing, or stop what's happening at the federal level? The horrors being perpetrated by those in the executive branch and the Republican Congress? Not necessarily, but what they can do is make sure that they fight back in ways that really matter. They need to stop. They need to start withholding funds from the federal government. Blue states fund red states. Stop it. They need to make sure that they do not cooperate with ICE. They do not allow the National Guard or active duty military in their cities. They need to make it clear to the American people that this is un-American, it is anti-American, and it is dangerous beyond our comprehension to allow these things. And it's heartening to see that at least some of them, even Kathy Hochul of New York, whom I found in many ways disappointing, she understands that we are at war and has said that explicitly. More people need to be saying that more loudly. So all is not lost by any stretch. That does not mean it's not going. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy, and it doesn't mean that many people are going to be hurt in the process. And many people, especially because of sociopaths like Robert Kennedy and Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott, are going to die needlessly.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of pain, and I think we have to go in eyes wide open, Mary. We're pragmatists. I'm hopeful, but I'm a pragmatist. Anyone who thinks by the snap of their fingers in 2026 things will get better, you're not paying attention. I was talking to David Rothkopf a couple of months ago. He's going to come back on Friday. He was having a meeting with a lot of experts, and he said right after that meeting, he said this on Substack Live. He said, I said, David, I think this generational damage has been done. And this was 6 months into the presidency. He goes, yeah, well, I just came back from a 2-day meeting with all these folks who said generational damage has been done. USAID is gone. Hundreds of thousands of people have been killed. Department of Education gutted. People don't trust our government when it comes to healthcare, CDC, top scientists, brilliant minds resigning. For the first time in years, immigrants aren't coming to America. Foreign students that subsidize domestic students aren't coming. Tourism has already gone down. Prices have gone up. America's reputation in tatters. The currency has gone down. First time, this is top of my head. First time ever, Moody's has downgraded U.S. credit rating. Donald has done this much damage in 7 months, folks. And speaking about an example of how we need leaders to fight back and why, Mary, I'm harsh on Democrats because I want them to be better. For the 2,500 people who are joining us, it's clear, if it isn't, that we don't do a both sides between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, or both sides between what is this modern right-wing authoritarian movement and the Democratic Party. But the reason why I'm so hard on Democrats is because I know they can change. They're at least changeable, malleable to an extent. And this is why we need to see a robust fight and a new type of fighter who's willing to adapt and evolve and be agile. We haven't seen that. What we've seen is civility politics, bending the knee, platforming right-wing people, conceding to their talking points, throwing the woke under the bus, trying to find the liberal Joe Rogan. We're like, no, you need to freaking fight. When they go low, you take them out by their goddamn knees. And then also, you need to elevate these new type of fighters who are promoting an economic populist message. So here's some good news. As Florida has moved to end vaccine mandates for school children, that's the terrible news. People will die. States go their own way. California, Oregon, Washington criticized RFK and announced an alliance and said that they are going to implement their own vaccine policy. One thing, Mary, one thing. You need California governors to actually be more robust. I believe there need to be, we need to do strikes. I think we need to do boycotts. I think they need to say, California, my home state, subsidizes the federal government, gives $85 billion. Without our money, friggin' red states won't get any disaster relief. All right, we're done. And also, I want to ask you about this because Mehdi Hassan, friend of the show, friend in real life, came out with a piece today for The Guardian, and I'm glad he said this, and I want him either tomorrow or Friday to talk about it. I've been saying that it ain't just Schumer, Mary. I've been saying Schumer and Jeffries have to go. On your show, I've been saying for a long time, he ain't built for this. Ever said, oh, Jeffries, he's younger. Watch, don't go against the black man who's a leader. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Schumers and Jeffries, by their actions, have shown me they are not built for this fight. They are not made for this moment. The Democratic establishment, the leadership at this, where we are right now, does not have the fighters and the mindset. Your take.
Yeah, it is. I think one of the tragic things about the moment in which we live is that if we have the opportunity to look back at it, if democracy doesn't survive this moment, a lot of the blame can be laid at the feet of those who actually had the power to do something about it, and we should have, and were led to believe wanted to do something about it. The Merrick Garlands of the world, for example. So I think Chuck Schumer should never have been leader in the first place. He is disastrous, and I thought it was a very, very bad sign after he and 9 other traitorous Democrats voted with the Republicans for the appropriations bill. The rest of the Democrats in the Senate didn't wage a coup and just tell him to step down and elect somebody who was actually interested in doing the job. Neither he nor Jeffrey seems to understand this moment, which is quite frankly mind-boggling. And it speaks to just how insular that world is in which they live. They don't seem to have any perspective on what this country is facing. And it's alarming because then you do look at Democratic state governors who do seem to get it, especially J.B. Pritzker. They see that this is a fascist regime. They see the incursions into American civil liberties. They see the unspeakably cruel policies being put in place against immigrants and undocumented workers to chill Americans' willingness to speak freely and to assemble peaceably. So we need, I think, any Democrat who has shown time and time again they don't understand and they are unwilling to change, they need to be primaried, they need to be voted out. And in terms of the broader project, you and I and others of the nerds have been talking about this for a long time. We need to get to a point where we shut it all down. We need to shut it all down. I don't see any other way. There was a time right after the election when we all believed that the best thing to happen was for Donald and the Trump regime to kind of burn it all down as quickly as possible, because then we would it would be such a shock to the system. It would wake people up, but the longer it took, the more normalized everything would get,
There you go.
because
There you
that is
go.
what corporate media specializes in. That is what establishment Democrats seem to prefer. And here we are 8 months in, and things are continuing to get worse. And there is still very little pushback at the federal level. And the fact that this press conference today was the first major attempt by the Democratic Party to make waves and make news, they should be doing something like this every day. They could have done something every day about January 6th, about Donald's grifting, about the corruption in the Trump regime, about Stephen Miller and the fact that he's a Nazi who has an army of brown shirts destroying lives every day in America. I mean, there is so much they could be doing in terms of winning the messaging war, which is, quite frankly, at the national level, is the only war the Democrats can win because they don't have power.
But why not use your time instead to attack Zoran Mamdani, Mary? I think that'll be a better use of your time.
Well, yeah, don't get me started.
I'm going to let Mary go because she has a show at 6. But to put a pin on what she just said and to show you what we're up against, we are up against not just establishment Democrats, but also corporate America. And
Yep.
unfortunately, this is the world's worst "I told you so" tour for me, because on Mary's show, The Nerd Avengers, me and many others who are just students of history said, "Watch out for corporate America. They will lay out the red carpet for fascists." And I don't know if you saw this quote from Pfizer CEO, who said that Trump said it today, folks. Pfizer CEO said Trump is worthy of Nobel Peace Prize for COVID vaccines. That happened, folks. This is where we are. You see corporate media bending the knee. You see Democrats bending the knee. And what Mary said of shut it all down, I had Allison on yesterday. Mother, she wrote, the breaking news while we were talking was the mayor of DC, right here 20 minutes from me, said, well, I might work indefinitely with the federal troops to have the presence. So the fact that the mayor bent the knee, Allison was like, I'm done, shut it down. And what she said, going back to Mary's bringing up the receipts of Chuck Schumer, throwing his own party under the bus by continuing the funding of the government, right? The House Democrats were against it, Senate Democrats were against it. And at the last second, remember that, folks? Chuck Schumer came out, did a total 180 and said, no, we're going to help fund because we're the responsible party. And then he got 9 other Democrats to do it. Well, then that allowed Donald Trump and Doge to dismantle more government institutions. So you, Danielle, my other co-host, and Allison are like, okay, when it comes to funding the government, Democrats, you say, nah, we'll fund the government once you remove National Guards off our streets, once you stop deporting brown folks, once you stop dismantling our agencies, and once you release the Epstein files. And then we'll vote for you. What are you going to do? You have the House and you have the Senate, you have the Supreme Court, you have the media, you have the presidency. People are going to blame you. Peace out. Will they actually do the right thing, Mary, or will Chuck Schumer listen to his corporate donors? I am a cynic when it comes to leaders, political leaders. I think Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries will listen to corporate America and their donors. I hope I'm wrong.
I mean, what's just so appalling is that we're facing another government shutdown. And if they had just let it all shut down in the first place, we could have avoided so much of this. And also, the other thing that you didn't mention is that the union that represents the vast majority of federal workers was begging the Democrats to let the government shut down, because it would have done much less damage in the long run than capitulating in the way they did.
So painful. Folks, I was telling Mary that she just helped me set a record. I did 5 Substack lives today. I don't know why, they're all helpful. I actually enjoy them. And we have 3,000 people watching. I've been talking for about 40 minutes to the great Mary Trump. We'll have this up later on our Substacks. Please subscribe to Mary Trump's Substack. Please subscribe and become a subscriber to her YouTube show. She has a show on tonight at 6 p.m. This is also The Left Hook. I have no paywalls. If you're watching for the first time, subscribe. And don't worry, we'll have this up with transcripts later on. Mary, before I let you go, shamelessly promote yourself.
Oh man, I should be prepared at this point. Well, you kind of just promoted me already, so I'll just repeat it. My Substack is The Good in Us. We have Mary Trump Media has a YouTube channel, and we are this close to 500,000 subscribers. So if you
Oh,
want to go
almost.
over there and help us get to 500,000, we would really appreciate it. And in the not too distant future, our reboot of the Nerd Avengers will be premiering. So we will keep you posted on that as well, because I really miss you guys, and it would be really fun to get the band back together.
It's awesome. I've been witnessing Mary. She created her YouTube channel when it had literally zero, as we all do. And then we saw it grow to 50,000, 100,000. And now the fact it almost has a 500,000 is remarkable. So Mary has become a force now on YouTube. And she also, the Substack goes a long way to help Mary do independent media, folks. So if you can, please become a subscriber to her Substack. And then also, please, please, please watch her show. But before you watch our show at 6 o'clock, stick around because we have a former FBI agent and professor and CNN contributor, Asha Rangappa, on to break the record as my sixth and final, I hope final, Substack Live. I just invited her, so hopefully she says yes, or maybe I have to remind her via text. But Mary, thank you for joining us. This for the 3,000 people watching. This will be up on our Substacks later tonight, and I'm going to have Asha Rangappa, knows about national security, to talk about national insecurity during the era of Mr. Cankles.
All right. Well, Watch, thank you so much. Watch out for your Achilles cankle, and tell Asha I said hi. She's awesome.
Sticking around. Boom. Folks, for those who are joining us, 3,000, this is The Left Hook. Like I said, this is the sixth Substack Live we're doing today. There's a lot of news. I'll have it up later today. Hey, Asha, I was just telling everyone that you were helping me break a record. Mary Trump just said bye. Asha Rangappa just said hello. And you are my sixth Substack Live today because I'm a child of immigrants. And I was just telling people it's been a busy day. We talked about the survivors and the victims who came out of the Epstein file. Then I switched gears, talked to a member of the Biden administration who resigned and is urging better policy when it comes to Israel and Gaza. We talked about Laura Loomer weaponizing her Islamophobia and bigotry. Literally now, she has more influence, Asha, than like people within the Trump administration. Senator Warner couldn't go to an intelligence meeting because I can't believe it. This is not the Twilight Zone or Black Mirror. Laura Loomer said no. So Mark Warner, ranking Democrat senator, couldn't get into a meeting. That Laura Loomer also has had private meetings with Donald Trump, 2 private meetings with him. And he listened to her other than his own national security team when it came to punishing people for Signalgate. And also Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, listened to Laura Loomer. Folks who don't know this story, Palestinian kids who were injured, starving in Gaza, they got a temporary visa to come to America 2 weeks ago. This administration said, you know what? It's so bad, we're going to allow these Palestinian kids to come. Until Laura Loomer tweeted. And Marco Rubio responded to Laura Loomer and said, okay, Laura, we won't let these kids come in. So how do you think, Asha, our national security is doing when Donald Trump, Mr. McCankles, is listening to Laura Loomer, a self-proclaimed Islamophobe, a white nationalist, a Jewish woman who was once barred by Twitter before the Nazi lover took over and was so pissed off that Twitter deplatformed her, Asha, that she handcuffed herself to Twitter headquarters. How do you feel, Asha, as a former law enforcement official, as a professor, person with training in the FBI, that woman, Laura Loomer, has now more influence on Donald Trump than some of the most well trained, respected veterans in our intelligence and national security agencies. Asha?
Well, it's not good. Wow, we just dived right into Laura Loomer. Um, I'm just curious why. Like, has anyone unpacked what the root of the influence is? Do you know what I'm saying?
I think it was the sex. Uh,
Okay.
I think the sex.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
For people who don't know, they're like, what is she talking about? I'm like, the sex. Because Asha, you remember, Loomer and Donald Trump were very close right before the election.
Look, I don't know. I'm just saying that from a intelligence standpoint, when someone appears to really not, they don't have I won't say he doesn't have free will. He obviously has free will, but like when he's inexplicably, you know, constrained or it feels like he needs to do that, then she has some leverage over him, right? I mean, we see there's very few people. This is the thing here is there's very few people that Trump behaves, you know, deferentially to. One of them is Putin.
Mhm.
Another person is Laura Loomer. So, like, you know, you have to wonder what's going on. Like, what's the nature of this relationship? What is the leverage that this person has? Is it a carrot? Is it a stick? And so that's sort of, I don't think anybody would dispute that this is very, very bad for our national security. But I mean, honestly, at this point, like, we have 99 problems, you know what I'm saying? And so it's, like, hard to figure out which one is the worst, actually.
And
I
that's
wasn't even
that's why I
thinking
wanted
about
you.
Laura Loomer when I came on.
Yeah, well, we were just I apologize to everyone that my brain went to Laura Loomer. It's because last night that news of Senator Warner, I was like, wow, a senator could not fulfill his job and go to an agency and get intelligence because Laura Loomer said no. And I'm talking to Asha Rangappa, who's an American lawyer, former FBI agent, assistant dean of admissions, and senior lecturer at Yale University. Also was with me as a commentator on CNN, and she's so hard to get, guys. I've been trying for weeks, so it's a pleasure that we finally got her here. But you're right. There's so many balls, right? Because you mentioned Putin. I was going to go to Putin, and then there was also the story that people have seemed to have forgotten. Oh yeah, the purging of the current and previous intelligence officers. This 37 who lost their clearance, who were investigating Russia's intelligence, and oh yeah, the Epstein files, and oh yeah, the fact that Kash Patel is our FBI agent without having any law enforcement background. So there's so much happening.
And don't forget Tulsi, who basically outed a undercover CIA officer in that list of
One,
37 people.
one of the 37 people was an undercover CIA officer when they lost their clearance, essentially became a moving target. Let's talk about Putin first and foremost, because a lot of this stuff that has happened in the past 2 weeks has happened right after
Yeah.
Trump literally rolled out the red carpet for Putin. As a person who is in law enforcement, as a patriot, as a person who took an oath, that entire theater of those 2 days. Asha, your response.
I mean, it's hard to find adjectives these days because you say something is bizarre, but that seems like it should be relative to something else, and everything is bizarre. Um, Ironically enough, John Bolton had a very nice piece in the Washington Examiner where he detailed everything that was bizarre and wrong, really, about that meeting. And among other things, just that there appeared to be very little planning that went into it. I mean, that's a head of state visiting, right? Like, that's a big deal. I know that these days, we don't follow norms and stuff, but normally what you would do is you would have a whole team that would, be choreographing every piece of this, and also to have a very clear strategy on what you hope to accomplish in this conversation, how to frame questions in order to, maximize U.S. interests in this kind of conversation, given that he's, in theory, an adversary of the U.S. I don't know if technically Russia is anymore or not. I don't know I don't know what anything is anymore. But you're right. A lot of this stuff, the crazy the especially crazy started happening right after, like the Bolton raid happened right after.
Right. And
Yeah.
and the Bolton raid, can you just, because I'm so glad you brought it up because I have like so many things in my mind. And it's called flooding the gates. Steve Bannon's strategy, right? To just overwhelm people. That Bolton raid that we've now completely forgotten about. Oh, Asha, using the same fact pattern, if Joe Biden had ordered a raid on a former critic like that, how would law enforcement respond? How would elders in the law enforcement community respond? How would veterans respond? What would they say?
Well, I mean, I will say that in this case, and I've written about this in my piece for the Times, and I've talked about it in my podcast. I mean, the tricky part here is that they did get a search warrant. So whatever, I don't know if Trump ordered this, but even if he did, there was an evidentiary bar that needed to be met in court. Now, having said that, I think that people would be right to still have reasonable concerns because this is also an administration where the Justice Department has not always been on the up and up, even going into court in front of judges. Another norm that's been broken because typically the Justice Department guards its credibility and the capital that it has with the federal courts, very carefully. They don't want to lose.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. But he did, they did get a search warrant for two locations from two different magistrate judges. Having said that, if this had, if this something similar had happened under the Biden administration, I just can't see it would have happened without there being some additional buffer, like I'm going to appoint a special counsel so that, it's like farther removed from me. Because the thing is that part of, and this is something that this administration doesn't care about, is normally you care about the perception of conflict of interest or bias. Like, even if it's totally legit on the back end, if it appears that it's not, that is bad. It's bad for democracy. It's bad for people's faith in the administration of justice. That's why we have things like special counsel, so that you have like some independent entity where you have, inspectors general, like things that are independent to kind
Right.
of ensure. And all of those are no longer there. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question.
It did answer it because I think what's important is we have to not normalize what is becoming normal in the Trump administration, right? Law enforcement, the DOJ is supposed to be independent, not the personal Gestapo or security detail of the president. The FBI director should actually be experienced and not a conspiracy theorist who has no law enforcement background, who goes on Steve Bannon's podcast and says, yeah, I have an enemies list. And once we get in power, we're going to go after Trump's critics, which include people in the press and others.
And John Bolton.
Yeah, John Bolton, right? And look, it's Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, who, according to the Wall Street Journal, privately tells Donald Trump he's all up in the Epstein files. And in the past 3 months, I'm using this word, it seems to be a cover-up because they lied to it, right? It's supposed to be an independent agency that follows norms and regulations and does not submit to Donald Trump or any leader. And my fear is that the FBI, under Patel and Bongino, is being systematically purged of those people who are loyal to the rule of law and the Constitution.
Yeah.
What have you heard, Asha?
I've heard exactly that. Yeah. This is they're not only getting rid of people who are, and by the way, I would say people that are not just loyal to the Constitution and the rule of law, but who probably hew conservative, right? So we're not talking, this isn't, we're not talking about an agency like USAID that you might even say, oh, these are like liberals and, commies or whatever. Like, that is not the FBI, right? I'm
Those
sorry.
flaming leftists with Che posters in the FBI, right, Asha?
Yeah, exactly. So they're purging people. So, if so what they are looking for is pure loyalty to a person. And just to that point, they are lowering standards. So Patel has cut the training for FBI agents. When I went through, it was 4 months. He's reduced it to 8 weeks. And most of what he's cut out is the academic training. The
Ugh.
academic training for us was mostly about the Constitution, about the Fourth Amendment, a lot of legal training to you understand the legal parameters that you're allowed to operate in, the internal guidelines and buffers and things like that. And they are also allowing people into the FBI without a college degree,
That
which
was last week it was announced, right?
yeah, I mean, the FBI typically conducts complex criminal investigations, complex financial investigations, counterintelligence. You know, I not knocking people who don't have a college degree, but you do learn things in college. You learn critical thinking, you learn research, you learn writing, you learn a lot of important skills that, in my view, for the kind of work that the FBI has traditionally done, those skills that you need. And so it is definitely, there is an intention to turn it into a very different FBI.
Not just in FBI, which is supposed to be an independent law agency, right? That's supposed to do these massive investigations, stings, keep people safe. But it seems to me, with what's clearly happening and articulated by the people running the Trump administration, is a purging of anyone who's seen as part of the deep state and not loyal. And in that purging is a removal of hundreds of years of experience, of intelligence, of people who've actually done the work with neophytes. And I'll give you an example. I don't know if you followed the story. Number one domestic terror threat in America is right-wing terrorism, white supremacist terrorism. Gun violence is the number one killer of kids and young teens, more mass shootings than any other country on earth. Well, countering violent extremism, you think that would be a big deal. Asha, do you know that the person who's in charge of countering violent extremism in America now is 22-year-old Thomas Fugate, who was a former grocer and disciple of Stephen Miller. As a former FBI agent, do you go to sleep at night with eyes both closed, knowing that Thomas Fugate is now leading our countering violent extremism effort?
I mean, I don't sleep it well at night for a lot of reasons. So yeah, that would probably be among them. I mean, it's pretty clear that um, right-wing violent extremism is not a priority, and they're actively moving resources away from it. So they're not only not trying to monitor or combat domestic terrorism. I mean, honestly, based on some of the ICE propaganda that they put out for their recruiting, it seems like those are the kinds of people that they want to be
Yep.
joining the ranks, right? So, um, there was an article in the Washington Post about like the latest like ICE fair, and the quotes that they had from the people in there, are normally people who would would just never pass a background check because when we did background checks in the FBI, we had a mnemonic. It was called Carla F. Bad. People who follow me or read my stuff, I talk about it all the time. So Carla F. Bad stands for character, associates, reputation, loyalty, ability, finances, bias, alcohol and addictions, and drugs. And so you're screening for all of these things, right? Because what you want is somebody who's able to be objective and impartial and, enforce the law equally. And that I would be shocked if they are still doing background checks of any kind, to be
Uh,
honest.
Asha's talking about that Washington Post piece that came out a couple of days ago, where some of the quotes of these people who are trying to be ICE agents and in law enforcement, Aisha's much nicer to me. They're just straight up dumb. They're so dumb that even some right wing people were like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Listen, we have to have some standards." I saw a right wing account say, "Come on, guys, this like the bar that even right wing pro Trumpers are like, we can't have these people be in law enforcement." And I think it's important because there's so much, Asha, like you said, there's so much happening. People don't pay attention to our law enforcement agencies being hollowed out, to seeing people who deal with intelligence, with domestic threats, with intelligence threats, right? Agree with them or disagree with them. At least people are qualified,
And
competent, right?
public corruption.
Public corruption. Oh yeah, fraud, grifts. International spying, meddling in elections, all being taken out by Thomas Fugates. And you mentioned something about, oh, well, maybe they're replacing him with people who are like-minded, conspiracy theorists and people who were in the violent insurrection or supported the violent insurrection or are friends with people who supported the violent insurrection. Do you know who our the head of our NCTC is now, the director of our NCTC Counterterrorism Center?
No.
Joe Kent. Joe Kent, who is a fan of and allied with right-wing paramilitary forces and militias and conspiracy theorists, has been elevated, folks, to become, as of late July, our NCTC director.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I just wanted that pregnant pause for a second.
Okay.
And also, what we found out today, I don't know if you saw the latest news, was we're going to talk about the Epstein scandal, the files. The women came out today. Women came out today, bipartisan press conference, very powerful. And you would expect, okay, the House Republicans, they're going to, mention a subcommittee. They're going to do an investigation. They're going to release the files. As of about 2 hours ago, the news that came out is that the Republicans in the House, Asha, have established a subcommittee to relitigate January 6th. And the context of it is to create a more favorable narrative to the January 6th participants who were convicted. And Donald Trump has also laid the groundwork for them potentially being compensated for taking part in the insurrection. Your response to this subcommittee?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is something that's incredibly, just disheartening and alarming because they are very much trying to whitewash this and really change the narrative. Um, giving Ashley Babbitt the funeral honors. These are the same people who claim to back the blue, but they have not ever put up the plaque that commemorates the service of the people who were injured or died on January 6th, the law enforcement. Um, yeah, I mean, it's just an Orwellian situation, you know what I mean? Like, they really want to make us believe that we didn't see what we saw.
Don't believe the evidence of your eyes and ears. Ignore it. That was the final command of Big Brother, according to 1984. However, thankfully, finally today, something that Democrats should have been doing months ago, but whatever, it's done. Bipartisan effort to finally bring out the survivors. I'm sure you saw the clips. Uh, we heard them. And these survivors are now saying, all right, if you're not going to release the files, we know the names. We're going to release the files. I wanted your take on this Epstein. I call it malpractice. I don't know what else to say because Asha, well, two things. Let's talk about Ghislaine Maxwell because I want to keep her in the news. Can you just tell us, as a former law enforcement official, how cuckoo it is? I'm being very judicious with my words. For someone who is convicted, serving a 20-year prison sentence, a felony for being convicted, right, for sex trafficking, to get that type of magical transfer to a minimum security camp in Texas.
Doesn't happen.
Never, ever.
I mean, I don't know. I haven't scoured the records of history, to know whether it's ever happened. But if it did, it would have probably been corrupt because, you know, technically as a sex offender, you are by definition not minimum security. In other words, you're kind of categorically ineligible.
And
So they had to actually waive that designation for her in order to effect that transfer.
Who is they, Asha?
Someone in the Bureau of Prisons, but obviously at the direction of someone in the Department of Justice, because the Bureau of Prisons is under the Department of Justice.
Department of Justice. Who heads the Department of Justice?
The President of the United States.
Yeah.
Pam Bondi, who reports to the President of the United States.
Attorney General Pam Bondi, who apparently serves for Donald Trump. Also, folks, what we found out this is in addition to Alex Acosta giving the sweetheart deal to Jeffrey Epstein, despite all these women coming out on the record in 2008. And he got a deal, Asha, unheard of, maybe like you, I haven't scoured the records, but last time I checked, I've never seen anyone who openly admits to being pedophile with like what dozens of women come out. Have you ever heard in your training anyone get that type of sweetheart deal with the same criminal charges, the same felony that Epstein got, where he was out of jail, I think 6 out of the 7 days a week?
Yeah, I mean, they actually didn't even charge him with a felony. They agreed to not charge him at all. It was a non-prosecution agreement. So
Right,
remember,
right,
it
right.
wasn't even a plea agreement. They agreed to just not charge him if he pleaded guilty to a state offense, which I think was a felony, um, and, agreed to serve jail time. But as you said, he basically did not really serve jail time. Like, they let him out. And he was as far as I'm aware, like, sort of was living his life, although he was supposed to be in prison. And then more importantly, this is the piece that is impacting us now, is that Acosta included in the agreement an agreement not only to not prosecute him, but to never prosecute any of his um, co-conspirators, whether or not they were known to the office at that time or not. That is insane.
Yeah, and yeah, it's not me saying it's insane. It's Asha saying it's insane. So if Asha's saying it's insane, folks, this is not normal. This is not normal. And so when you heard those women and when you saw the women today, just your response to what we saw today, finally.
I'm just glad that they finally had the microphone, you know? I mean, what we've been listening to Ghislaine Maxwell, and I mean, that Todd Blanche interview was like, it was pathetic. It was really pathetic. When I started looking through that transcript, I mean, it was like, who are you? And how do you know Jeffrey Epstein? And it's like, what are we talking about here? This woman has been convicted. And, he's just kind of softballing these questions to her. It was just such a farce. So, and I think such an insult to the victims, right?
Right.
And at the end of the day, I was on CNN, where some guy was trying to claim that he was trying to find new leads for the case. I was like, okay, is this like interviewing OJ to find the real killer? Like, is this that is
If
like
I did it, if I did it, Asha, let me write a book.
Yeah. 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 But so, if you really wanted new leads, who would you talk to? You talk to the victims because they're the ones who can identify the people who were the
And
perpetrators.
wouldn't you talk to the prosecutor who prosecuted that case? But oddly, can you tell us what happened to Maureen Comey, Asha? What happened to her? How come
She was
Todd
fired.
Blanche went?
She was
Oh,
fired.
and how is that normal to
That's not
fire the special
normal.
proc?
It's not normal. In fact, if you were going to interview Ghislaine Maxwell, she would be the one to do it because she is so deeply familiar with the facts of the case. And so then you would be able to know immediately, like you would know like what questions to ask and then how to push back, or you'd know how to test her credibility by asking questions that you know the answer to, but she may not know that you know the answer to, and then you can kind of like test it out. That's how you do those things. You don't go in just like that Todd Blanche did.
Todd Blanche, who by the way is the deputy attorney general, and I heard someone say that deputy attorney general like barely leaves Washington. So the fact that he went for 2 days
And
and talked
former
to her,
personal attorney to the president.
former personal attorney of the president, and Maureen Comey, I talked to other folks that are like, actually, Joyce was saying this also, is that the person who should have gone is the prosecutor. But the prosecutor, and no one knows why, was fired. Maureen Comey, and we know why she was fired. And we're seeing this all happening in real time, right? The deep state that they're all alleging, Asha, the conspiracy theory that part and parcel of this anti-Semitic white supremacist conspiracy theories, also part of the whole QAnon conspiracy theory, right? It's all projection because it seems like they're becoming the deep state. Like they're becoming this unified force
Yeah.
that served only for Donald Trump. And another piece of news that came out when it comes to Epstein that I wanted to keep track of because it got leaked. But then they eventually met was that JD Vance was meeting with Pam Bondi and Kash Patel. Pam Bondi, again, folks, is the attorney general. Kash Patel, again, is the FBI director. And Dan Bongino, who come up with messaging and strategy to respond to the Epstein scandal. This was a couple of weeks ago, and then apparently it got leaked, so they canceled it, but apparently then they met again at a later date. Again, just because I want to make sure that we don't normalize this. Is that normal for the attorney general and the FBI director to meet with the vice president to come up with messaging around the scandal?
No.
No, okay. Just want to clarify. I'm a simple English major. This is why I asked the questions. Um, so as we're witnessing, okay, so we've set it up. This is what's happening with the FBI, folks. Is being purged. FBI agents, much like EPA folks, much like DOE folks, much like people at the CDC, much like FEMA employees, have already warned about the purging. There is
But
apparently
I mean, just to, I've been reading David Graham's The Project, which is he's an Atlantic writer,
it
and
just came out in paperback recently, right?
yeah, and and because the initial one is just so turgid and like it's impossible to, it's like very long, but this, they were very clear. This is one of the main policy agendas, which is to purge the civil service. And this was also, a part of the, I mean, what we haven't been talking about is also the weird, and this is going to be in my Substack this week, probably on Saturday. Um, the weird philosophies that these tech bros follow,
Oh, I've
like
been talking about it all day.
the Yarwinism and stuff,
Oh
because
yeah.
that also includes purging the entire administrative state, because what you're going to do is hollow it out, give all those jobs to AI, which they run, you privatize it, and then they make all the money.
I want to tease up and set up your in-depth article, but it's perfect for my audience who are joining because I had Nafiz Ahmed, who literally spent 35 minutes earlier today talking about Curtis Yarvin and the alt-right. And then 2 days ago, we had Gil Duran, who talked about this. So let's just tease it out so people can read the full the full version. But I'm very curious because I've been, I've been making as much connection as I can with Curtis Yarvin, but I didn't know there was a connection between Yarvin and the FBI and their plans, their techno-fascist plans for the FBI. Can you tease it out a
I
bit
don't
more?
know about directly with the FBI. I was mainly saying with JD Vance.
Okay, so go for it. Tell me
Yeah,
what you.
so I mean, I think, for some of the things that he's said, there's I cite to, I think, an NPR article, but they basically do some parallel, between Yarwin's writings and the things that JD Vance talks about. So Yarwin basically says, he says that democracy is basically inefficient and I don't know if he calls it a sham, but it doesn't work because you have these three institutions. You have the government, the media, and universities who all act in concert. He calls it the cathedral.
Mm-hmm.
And they all act in concert to basically inculcate and brainwash people into progressive ideologies being representation and equality and basically these like democratic principles. And so you have to basically get rid of all of it. You have to burn it all to the ground. There should be no voting. There should be no representation. None of that means anything. You need to let smart people run things, and you basically should have like a corporate autocracy.
Yep.
So you put
White people, smart white men.
smart white people should run it. And so you basically have a monarch, like a CEO slash monarch that runs things. And you have maybe like a board of directors that I guess also consists of other smart white men, it sounds like to me. Um,
The
and
broligarchs. The
yeah,
the knights at the round table are the broligarchs, and the broligarchs then choose the monarch who kind of rules over all of them, but answers to them.
right. And so, and basically the world ends up just kind of split into, and this is like their worldwide vision, into different patches where there's nothing like, nation states. They're just like competing patches where people just decide where to live based on the services and goods that any patch provides. Of course, the services are provided by the tech bros that have privatized all of the government functions and I guess sell it to you. I don't know. Yeah, somebody said Hunger Games. It is sort of like a Hunger Game. It's very it's funny because when I was researching for this piece that I'm writing, I'm like, this sounds like something that like a 13-year-old would write or come up with. Like it's very intellectually lazy and facile and like I don't know, like, somebody just, like, needs to get out more or something. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I know, but they are.
it's not like a smart theory.
No. No, you're absolutely right. These people, the Curtis Yarvin, who's the philosopher king of these broligarchs, he was a loser. He was an incel loser, basement type guy. And Peter Thiel really liked his theories, and he's the one who bankrolled them and made him into a thing. But New Yorker did a deep profile and showed him to be, like most of these people, very mediocre, not that smart, nervous, dorky, shy, bullied as a kid, right? And Curtis Yarvin, folks, this guy, what Asha said, she's not making any of it up. That's his philosophies. Peter Thiel, the billionaire, likes him. Elon Musk likes him. Andreessen of Andreessen Horowitz likes him. And JD Vance follows him on Twitter. And JD Vance, for those who watched my Substack today and earlier today, was bankrolled and groomed by Peter Thiel and hand delivered by Peter Thiel, Musk, and David Sachs to Donald Trump as his VP candidate. These few folks believe in a techno-fascist utopia where wealthy, rich white men will rule essentially fiefdoms. And they're not interested in saving Earth because they think Earth is cooked, Asha. So that's why they want to save the most talented and the best of humanity who will be spawned from their seed, not making this up. And then in a spaceship, they will go colonize Mars and repopulate humanity, the best of the best, the most productive. Huge eugenics angle on this also, folks. Not making this up, folks. Just it's all out there. Just listen. They don't hide any of it. And so we're witnessing that. And so this type of deliberate uh, gutting out of the government, of the media, right? When it comes to the
Destroying
national
universities, that's a major part of it.
DEI, anti-woman, anti-black, anti-transgender, anti-culture.
Well, Yarvin
And
also he very explicitly says he believes in race science, and he also thinks that we should come up with a technique for humane genocide.
yep. And he thinks, and he also is a proponent of like Matrix and Soylent Green, that unproductive people can be used as fuel. So it's like the 13-year-old who
Biodiesel.
saw the Matrix. Yeah, a biodiesel, right? So it's like a 13-year-old who saw like Matrix and like, this is a cool idea. And the best articulation of this that I've seen recently is the show Alien Earth. Alien Earth has this guy. Like, what happens if freaks like this in the future control Earth? Literally, that's the plot of the show. The entire Earth is ruled by 5 corporations and 5 CEOs, and one of them, who's probably the most villainous, is a guy who calls himself Prodigy, and completely misunderstands Peter Pan. And they unleash hell and havoc on Earth by releasing these dangerous species. When it comes to the weaponization, though, what's really scary, and as a person of color, as a Muslim, black people watching, it's like, all right, we already had our problems with law enforcement, with FBI, but there were qualified, intelligent, competent people like yourselves, people who did the good work, people who went after white collar crime, people who, last month in the sex sting operation in Las Vegas, who caught those 7 men, including the Israel's cybersecurity director, right, in the FBI sting operation. I don't know if you heard about this, Asha. He was in Las Vegas. He was caught trying to solicit sex with a 15-year-old boy who, thank God,
Yeah,
was an
yeah.
FBI agent posing. They arrested him with 7 other men.
And then they sent
He's
him
in
back.
Israel right now. He's in Israel.
Yeah, they sent him back. You know, so probably the people who are listening, I think that you and I may not agree exactly. Like we might have different views of the FBI in terms of trusting them or whatever, right? And that's fine. We have a healthy debate, maybe healthy disagreement about that. But what I would say, so I'm just saying for people who might be more skeptical, because sometimes I post things about the Bureau on Blue Sky. People are like, "What about COINTELPRO?" And like they go down the road, and so what I would say is the difference between the FBI that we had before Trump 2.0 and what we have
Right.
now is that precisely because of many of the what I would acknowledge are low moments in the FBI's history, abuses, all of that, there were many guardrails and oversights and things that were built in, which is not to say that they continued to, like, that they suddenly became perfect, but it was easier to identify when they went off the rails, right? Like, even in the first Russia investigation, there were, numerous oversight investigations about FISAs and whatever, and they found all the, discrepancies that they needed to fix, et cetera. And that, was like another layer of to ensure compliance or to at least be able to weed out when rules are being followed. What we have now is not even that.
Nope.
So that's what people need to understand. Like when you compare now, like, oh, this is just how it's always been. No,
Nope.
no. Even if you didn't trust the FBI or didn't think the intelligence community was trustworthy or whatever, what we have now is a fundamentally different uh, framework that is completely untethered to any laws or any oversight or any kind of, um, even agency driven culture or mission that might prevent them from doing certain things.
It's terrifying. Who watches the Watchmen, right? To quote Rage Against the Machine, some of those who work forces are the same who burn crosses, but now they're up and down in ICE and FBI, right? And they're also dumb and uneducated.
Yeah.
And they want the dumb, uneducated
They
ones
want
and the
dumb
people.
and educated because they're easier. They can manipulate them more. You can see that they're doing it with the recruitment efforts too. I talk about this too in my Substack, that they're triggering their identities as white men, right? Defend the homeland from the invaders, like all this kind of stuff.
Yep.
Which then makes it easier to kind of tribalize them, right? Then they get conditioned to seeing other Americans, other fellow citizens and humans as the enemy. Like that's the point. They don't, and because they don't have those critical thinking skills or um, they haven't developed the skills to question and things like that, which I think the current cadre of FBI agents and other people in the intelligence community probably would. The military still has this. I think they're trying very hard to purge it. That's just a bigger institution. I don't know how. I talked with Mark Hertling about this, about how easy it's going to be to subvert that. But yeah, they want to get that critical thinking out and make them, just basically mindless thugs.
And bring it back full circle, if you think Asha and I, what we're saying is just too extreme. J.D. Vance, the vice president, who was bankrolled and groomed by Peter Thiel, a white nationalist who follows Curtis Yarvin, and by the way, J.D. Vance also follows Curtis Yarvin. He wrote a foreword to a book written by an extremist. The book is called Unhuman, and the book argues that the rest of us are exactly that, unhuman. So J.D. Vance is positioning himself as to be this avatar, this successor to Donald Trump, who will cleanse the homeland and America of the filth
He's
that is
married to
invading.
an Indian woman, an Indian American woman.
Maybe
His
you can
children,
remind them, Asha.
his children are
Use the
biracial.
Indian bat signal. Use the Indian female bat signal. Why have I blame you, Asha, for not warning Asha and getting Asha back on the track? On behalf of all Indian women, what are you doing? Yeah. So this is another thing that you mentioned, that's what they're setting up for, folks. And if you listen to some of the recorded, so a lot of citizens are recording these ICE masked armed ICE agents. You should listen to them. They openly support the Proud Boys. They openly say, yeah, Trump might be bad, but liberals are worse. It's the
Yeah, yeah.
liberals' fault. So they're dehumanizing us through language. They're dehumanizing us through their philosophies. They're dehumanizing us through ideologies. And now when you have armed, compliant, not that sophisticated men who feel like they can finally be the cowboys, the Knight Templars who can cleanse their nation, and they wear a badge, who's going to stop them? And this is why I think this is really important for people to really focus on this and see what's happening in real. Asha, did you ever think you'd live in a time when the National Guard would be armed and along with the military and massed armed ICE agents would be patrolling the Capitol and Los Angeles?
Well, I mean, I guess after the Rodney King, Los Angeles might not be the
1992.
best.
92 was the last time. But
Yeah,
like any time when there wasn't riots, when there
yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
like
yeah.
any actual emergency.
No, no.
The
And you
last
know
time,
what? Republicans would have gone nuts at, any Democratic president trying to um, federalize a National Guard without a governor's consent.
maybe Kristi
Pence,
Noem Kristi Noem, when she went on television a couple of months ago and said just that. If
yeah.
Biden does that, it would be a step too far. Are you talking about that, Asha?
I was talking specifically about that. I was talking even broader, but yes, that's an example of that.
We're in scary times, Asha. I'm worried about the hollowing out of the FBI. Like you said, just based on experiences, some communities have a different experience, but even then, even though I have my experience with law enforcement and FBI, I know there are good people there. I know there are people who are qualified. I know there are people who are competent. I know there are people who have training. I know there are people who want to become more diverse, add more women, people of color, do cultural sensitivity training. Comey, I have my disagreements with him, but the reason why Donald Trump kicked him out, he said, "Nope, I'm not going to help you on this FBI thing." Remember, folks, bring the receipts back 10 years. That's why Comey got fired, which at that time was totally abnormal and unprecedented, because usually FBI directors, they just stay on. They fulfill their entire, was it 10 years?
10 years. They're supposed to.
10 years.
It's designed to cross administrations because they're not supposed to be tethered to a particular party or administration.
Which is why Democratic presidents just kept rolling on with them, right? Because, okay, that's the established decorum. It's not meant to be politicized, even though most FBI agents lean conservative, even though if he was always he, appointed by a Republican, so be it. Independent, follow the law, follow the evidence, due process, prosecute. If there's any irregularities or any misgivings, there will be, hopefully an audit, hopefully reforms. That's all gone, folks. Now we have what I call the Gestapo, the private army, the brown shirts of Donald Trump. And Asha's a question I have for you, because people ask me this question. I say, okay, you got the majority. People can rise up. We have the numbers. But how do you take on law enforcement, ICE, FBI, National Guard, and military if they're deputized, if you will, to terrorize us in the name of Donald Trump? And I'm not saying all these people are, but I'm saying if this keeps going and the purge keeps happening, if our law enforcement is not serving us or protecting us, and they could pretty much do anything they want when they have the badge and they have a gun, how do you stand up against that as a citizen?
Well, we have been fortunate in this country to not have to face this, but I think that question should make us look at people in other countries who do exactly that and who stand up to regimes at great peril to themselves, right? Like, I mean, just look at Ukraine. That's like literally fighting a war because of an invasion by this, authoritarian thug basically that has
Yeah.
invaded them. But yes, that the thing is the stakes get higher and higher. How do you do it? I don't know. You have to get courage. We have to have courage. And the thing is that unfortunately, and I think there are people trying to sound the alarm bells before the election, it's much easier to not put them in power in the first place. But once you do that, when you read people like Timothy Snyder, you don't comply in advance. Like the media companies and the universities that have caved, bad idea genes. In fact, I was reading today that CBS that, bent the knee, gave Trump $16 million for his bogus accusations, whatever. Kristi Noem has now come back and accused them of whatever, the same thing, like the selective editing or whatever. So, you give the bully your lunch money. Guess what? The bully's going to come back.
Again and again and again.
Again and again. And so, we need to stand up. Right now, we are not in the place of where, Hungary or even Russians in Russia or Ukraine or, any number of, even like, I would say argue that, I don't know. What do you think? I think India is still a few steps ahead of us, but I'm not sure anymore.
India is increasingly becoming fascist, but now India is aligning itself with Putin and Xi. That was a really remarkable development a couple of days ago. And India is reeling because Donald Trump doubled the tariffs on India. And the reason why Donald Trump got pissed off at India, folks, was because
He wouldn't.
India.
Modi wouldn't nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize.
Can't make this shit up, folks. So yeah, I think India is a couple of steps. Well, in some ways, a step ahead, especially because you have a far extremist, open fascist, anti-Muslim, leader and party and you've seen hate crimes. But it's such a diverse, robust democracy, flawed democracy, that to implement it, to implement Modi's Hindutva policies on India, I think. Same thing with America. It will collapse. There's too many people, too diverse, the train's too big. But so many people will get hurt, Asha. So many people will die.
So I have to run to an appointment at 6 o'clock. So I'm gonna say just a few more things and then I have to go. But I think you're right. I was talking with my colleague, Professor Kim Chappelli. She's a Princeton professor. She studies authoritarian regimes around the world. And I was reading about India, and I was like, how would you compare us to India, and how would you compare India to these other places? And she said, India is really interesting because although there's been a lot of democratic erosion, in a lot of ways, like the United States, they have a federalist. There's a federalist system, so they have states and they have the national government. So it's harder, as you're saying, I think, for Modi to control everything because it doesn't have this centralized thing. And so what I would leave with is, how do we do it? I think local is where it's going to be.
Yeah.
We need to get empowered locally. We need to, these kinds of things, is democracy in practice, where we're getting together, we're talking through it, but connecting with people in real life is very important. And not, protests are great, but also civic engagement at the local level, making sure you're support, finding ways, if you're in a blue state, to, you know, participate, and protect your state's interests from, like, whatever, another state invasion at this point. But even if you're a blue dot in a red state, there are a lot of things that ways to get involved with like-minded people. Joyce Vance and I talked about that, because that's, she says, I'm in Alabama, but I am still, I'm still engaged. So we can't check out, is what I would say, and we all have to, I think, not get overwhelmed with everything that we should pay attention, be aware of what's going on, but I think also then focus on what's in our sphere of control and where we can make an impact in the things that we do.
I'll respond to that, but before I do, I'll let Asha go. But before I let Asha go, Asha, do not be a stereotypical child of immigrants. Lean in and promote yourself. Shamelessly promote yourself for the nearly 4,200 people watching. How can people support you? How can people help you?
Thank you. So, I would love it if you checked out my Substack, the Freedom Academy. You can find it on Substack. I do a lot of free content. Most of my content is free. So, I would love to have you there. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And I post my clips and articles and stuff in a weekly newsletter. So that's sort of how I promote myself. Also, I'm doing a cruise next summer with my podcast co-host Renato Mariotti. We're doing a democracy cruise to Alaska. So you can join us for that too.
That sounds awesome. I've never been to Alaska, and that sounds like the most informative and nerdy cruise, but a cruise just for people like me and who also listen to your Substack and follow my Substack. All right, Asha, I'll let you go. Thanks for taking the time. That's Asha Rangappa. I'm just going to close it up here, folks. To follow up on what Asha said, this is 6 Substack lives today. Will I do 7? Let's see. Maybe later after I get hydrated. But so many folks who I've talked to the last couple of days have said, listen, unfortunately, we will have a tough time trusting our Trump administration, our federal government. We will have a tough time trusting what the CDC will say, what the National Institute of Health will say, what the FBI will say, because they're being purged of qualified individuals. I might disagree with them, but nonetheless, these were qualified individuals who actually, are in service to either humanity or the rule of law or helping people. And what Donald Trump and his lackeys want is service to themselves and themselves only. So that's why you've seen Dr. Moneres, I believe, who was appointed by Republicans. She said, no, I'm not going to implement your stupid anti-vax policy, and RFK tried to fire her. So you saw a wave of resignations to support that doctor in the CDC. The sad part is what's happening. We're going to lose all that expertise, brilliant minds. So you can't trust the CDC anymore. You can't trust the National Institute of Health. So I had Dr. Patel a couple of days ago, and I said, dude, who the F do we trust? And she said what Asha was saying. She's a doctor. Asha is a professor, former FBI agent, local. Trust people locally. You have to trust your local doctor, your local pediatrician, your local family medicine doctor. The analogy that she gave, I thought, was very powerful. Painful but powerful. She said, imagine you're in a plane. What does the attendant say? First, put on the mask on yourself, and after it's tightly secured, then make sure you put on the mask to your children. First, make sure you have the life vest on, and then get your children, right? And it makes sense, because if you're out there friggin' drowning, you can't save your kids. So take care of yourself, take care of your family, house by house, street by street, locally. Other people have said run for office, school boards. I just talked to an elected official, a former college friend of mine, a doctor who then ran for school board, who's now running for office. She was just a mom. She goes, I never thought I'd be running for office, but I felt like our school board needed more representation and diversity. And she was a bulwark as a result of being on the school board during these past 4 years on these attacks on DEI, right? Run for school board, run for city council. Also, I've said this before, some people don't like it. Why am I so harsh on Democrats? Because the Democrats at least can change. And this Democratic leadership, I do not believe they are built for this fight. They are not made for this moment. They're like fighters from 2000. And right, you need a new fighter. You need a new fighter with new skills who's more agile. They're not built for this. I'm talking about Schumer's, Jeffries, Pelosi, all of them. Thank you so much for your work. Thank you so much for your contributions. Please resign and or step aside and mentor the young people. I believe fighters like Mamdani, this guy, Graham Planter, AOC, others, anyone who's willing to show a fight and is willing to stand for something, which is why I think Newsom ultimately will not be the presidential candidate because he flip-flops too much. Anyone who's willing to stand for something. And I think the winning message that can get a whole bunch of people, even white folks, who get swayed by the Southern strategy on race and culture is it's us versus the oligarchy. It's the 99% versus the 1%. It's us against these rich bastards who are stealing our Medicaid, our healthcare, our pension plans. It's us against the greedy few. Oh, it's, fighting the oligarchy. A winning message. Will Democrats take it? I don't know. Let's see. It wins. The people who voted for Trump also voted for AOC. The people who like Trump also like Bernie. The people who voted for Trump now like Mamdani because he's running on a message of affordability. So you need fighters willing to change it up, be agile, call out something for what it is, say the words racism, authoritarianism, fascism, right? Call out the oligarchy. People willing to stop taking the dollar from APAC corporations. People willing to call out the genocide. I believe Israel Palestine is also going to be a litmus test issue. Just mark my words. That is now a litmus test issue for Democratic leaders moving forward, right? And then finally, boycotts. Don't underestimate the power of the dollar. Um, this country runs not on Duncan but on money. We are obsessed with money. We love money. We are capitalists. In God we trust. It's in the bills. The only color that barely trumps the color white is the color green. That's why I think the two weaknesses for Donald Trump, the two Achilles cankles, are the economy and Epstein. Target's CEO resigned after 11 years. Why? Because Target went all in with Donald Trump, threw their POC base under the bus, went against their DI policies. People said, F you, Target. They took that business very deliberately, strategically to Costco. Foot traffic in Costco went up. Foot traffic in Target went down. That dude resigned. All right. So you got to make them feel it. And also shut stuff down, man. Shut stuff down. The boycotts, the rallies, the mass mobilization, you have to be visible. I interviewed the Visibility Project, the overhead pass guys last week. And what they do, it's now in 46 states, start out organically. The visibility campaign, it's DIY. And every week they choose a new message and then they hang out at overpasses, these major overpasses in every state. And there's like a big party. So I saw it in Virginia, slowly but surely. I'm like, well, there's a couple of people with banners. Cool. They're resisting Trump. And then next week, more people. And then next week, more people. So now it's very deliberate. They deliberately say joyful warriors. Everyone's having a party with a coordinated message week after week. And when people see a lot of folks just smiling against Trump and fascists saying, nah, we're going to take you on. We're not afraid of you. We're not going to bend the knee. Hope, much like courage, it grows. It becomes contagious. And so as Timothy Snyder said and Asha said, that's why you don't obey in advance. If everyone bends the knee to the bully just becomes more empowered. One day he comes for your Lunchable. The next day he comes for your friend's Lunchable. The next day he comes for your desserts. You have to stand up to the bully. That's just my take. Who am I? Just a child of Pakistani immigrants and a lowly English major who did 6 Substack lives today. Folks, I haven't been able to put them on because I've been doing them back to back to back to back to back. So just give me an hour, and then I'll quickly publish them. They're really good. I'm not just saying it because they're part of the Left Hook, but I joined Dean Blundell and Lev Parnas right after the Epstein press conference. That 30 minutes, I think, was very good. After that, I had a conversation with Tariq Habash and Haris Tareen about how Laura Loomer's Islamophobia and anti-Palestinian bigotry traces back to the war on terror and how that is making us less secure as a nation. I was really happy to see like 1,000 people join up for that. We connected the dots. People seem to really enjoy it. 1,500 actually. And then we had Nafiz Ahmed, a great journalist who wrote about the alt-right. He follows Gil Duran. I'd had Gil Duran a couple of days ago talk about the Nerd Right. Nafiz had done great connecting the dots about Curtis Yarvin, Peter Thiel, J.D. Vance, eugenics, and how this has now taken over and mainstreamed the Republican Party and now influencing European fascist movements. Then I had Danielle Moody on. We talked about the Epstein files and also Hind Rajab, the 5-year-old girl, and how her movie got the 22-minute standing ovation and how women are fighting against fascists, both here and abroad. Then I talked to Mary Trump about Donald Trump's cankled presidency, and then I brought on Asha Rangappa. So my phone is about to die. I hope you all enjoy it. And I'm going to publish all these. I know because not everyone saw them, but strongly recommend listening to them. There's like 6 today. And tomorrow I got a whole bunch more, which I'll announce later. Folks, this is The Left Hook. No paywalls, reader supported. I keep everything free. I want people to be informed. If you are not a subscriber, subscribe. Everything's free. Everything. And if you can be a paying subscriber, I've kept it super cheap, $5. So if you can throw in a few bucks, it helps me. I'm a one-man shop, folks. But I try my best, and the community is growing. So thank you all. Everyone, be kind, be informed. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your families. Rest. It's a long walk. And please, oh, please don't be a fascist. Take care.